What does Anthony Belton bring to the Green Bay Packers besides an absolutely enormous human body? Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack joins us to give us the scouting report on a rookie orientation series on the Packers' second-round pick.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack joins us on the show today. It is an Anthony Belton rookie orientation series. This is a fun one because Anthony Belton is a player I don't think a lot of Packer fans had on their radar. 6'6", 336. Massive. Had an 8.8 RAS, relative athletic score, as a guard. It was a shade under 8, 7.88 as a tackle. Almost 34-inch arms. And he came to the combine at 336. You watch him, I think there are times he's playing at 340, 345 plus. This is a 3-year starter at left tackle with elite, and I mean elite, pass blocking grades. Elite grades in true pass sets. He's a really talented pass protector. Guys that big do not move like him. 75th percentile run grades according to Pro Football Focus. So a good, not great run blocker, but the good is great, if that makes sense. Because there's some weird stuff in there where you're like, you know, for a big guy, you'd like to see him move bodies at a different level than he does. You see flashes where you're just like, holy hell. And then there's times where you're just like, that's it. He's already 24, JUCO transfer, but plenty of experience. So that's what you like. If you're gonna flip the age part of this, how much time does he need? And this is the really interesting part of my conversation with Kenton, because what he said, and I don't want to preempt too much of it, is that the degree to which Belton is raw, I don't know that he's a raw prospect, but there is a particular thing the Packers are going to have to coach up about him that's not necessarily a football trait. And I'll let him tell you about that. I thought he had, I mean, he's enormous. You see it on tape right away. It's 6'6", 336. It pops off the page, but so do his hands. He is so physical with his hands, so powerful. He looks like, you know, a robot out there just throwing guys around at times. He's got really good feet for his size. And then there are moments when he plays with on-point technique, bends at the knee instead of the waist. And you go, how does anybody beat this guy? How does anybody go around this guy or through this guy? When he plays with good fundamentals in his lower body, he is an absolute wall in pass protection. There are reps on tape where you just go, this guy could be an all-pro. That's just not every rep. And that is what separates all pros from everybody else, is those plays for an all-pro are more plays than not. He doesn't sustain blocks as well as I would like for someone his size, for someone that has the power that he has. It's almost like he over-relies on the power. But he has the hand strength, the power to do it. He just doesn't always do it. He has, especially for a big guy, the flexibility to get worked back. So someone maybe gets into his chest with a long arm. They try and bull rush him, and he gets worked back with his upper body. He has the flexibility to get worked back and get his cleats in the ground, anchor, and not move off his spot. Now, the guys that I think can get him as a pass rusher, they're speed guys generally, but not the way that you would normally think from a big guy where you go, you can just get to the edge around him. They're the kinds of players who can redirect. And maybe he feints inside, gets Anthony Belton to sort of commit to that side and then gets around him, or looks like he's going to run the hoop and then sticks that foot in the ground and works back inside. He's not great on counters and redirecting. That's the one place. He can mirror pretty well, and he can kick slide really well. If you're going to just try and run the hoop on him, good luck. James Pierce Jr. at Tennessee tried that. The Falcons gave up a future first-round pick to come up and trade for that guy in the draft. And Anthony Belton played well against him. He is the kind of player that I just really like. And I've said this before. There are a handful of snaps at right tackle where they flipped him just so they could run behind him. And there are moments when he's just putting guys in the ground. Nasty as a finisher. He's got super powerful upper body, torque defenders. Now he lunges at times, and that's where there's some issues, but I don't think it's a regular problem. And I mentioned the Tennessee game, James Pierce Jr. They're down big late in that game. He is still competing his ass off. That's one of the things that I love. His football attitude, and not in a dirty way, not in a I'm going to go beyond the whistle kind of way, not the I'm going to get a penalty, I'm going to do something stupid kind of way. Just in a I'm going to play hard because this means something to me, man. That. And I love that. I love that. Here's my final report on Belton. Guys like, and I've read this before, but here we are. It's his rookie orientation. Guys like Belton are catnip for me. He's enormous but light-footed with power and tenacity. I wish he moved bodies more, and I think he can stand to add some strength to his lower body. So there's some body work that can be done here, I think, and that's the natural evolution of these players as they get into the NFL. The NFL plans, you grow up, you mature, your nutrition changes, your weightlifting regimen changes, all that stuff. But he is a grown-ass man. I wrote this in my notes. With a powerful upper body and plays pass protection with an edge. There are times when he's a finisher, and it's more often than not, though, he has issues sustaining blocks. You'd think speed would be an issue, but it's really more nuanced pass rushers who can really change direction well. That's just like code for really, really good pass rushers. Most guys cannot do that. Those guys are few and far between, even in the NFL. Okay, I wrote it right in my notes. I'd give him a shot at tackle before moving him to guard, but he can be a really good guard to a second-round grade. So I was higher than most on him in the pre-draft. The consensus was just lower than that, more like a borderline day 2 player. The Packers got to hope that they're right, because they took him over some other guys who the consensus were much higher on. And I can't talk out of both sides of my mouth. I can't say, well, I care about the consensus, and I think it's important to know what the consensus means. It would be easy for me to say, look, because I like him, I'm okay that the Packers liked him. And I do feel that way to a point, but I understand that I am outside the mainstream on that. The Packers are outside the mainstream on that. And history tells us that when you stray from the mainstream, and the further you stray from the mainstream when making these sorts of selections, the more likely you are to be wrong. Now, the Packers have a good offensive line. They're hoping that Anthony Belton can help them make it a great offensive line. We'll see if he has that kind of juice, and we'll talk to Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack about that coming up next. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Plus, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. Track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDON for half off your first year. Joining me now to give us the skinny on one of the biggest players in the draft, Anthony Belton. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack joins me. And Kenton, I'm really excited to do this because I had as much fun watching Anthony Belton as almost any prospect in the draft, because when he puts his hand on you, it is probably over. Like his power on contact is unbelievable. But let's take a step back here. Mm-hmm. He's going to come into the league 24 years old, but was a 3-year starter at North Carolina State at left tackle. That's a big job in the ACC. Let's take us back to when he first got to this team. What was the perception of him, and what has been the evolution?
So the perception when he first got here, this is a big junior college guy. He's a massive human being. His nickname immediately was Cadillac. And they also said that he had dancer's feet, Now, when you think of the name Cadillac, I think of Dolomite knows those old Cadillacs where you had to turn the wheel about 12 times to get it to roll. So I'm like, he must not be the most nimble guy. But the head strength and conditioning coach, Antonio Thunder Burnett, he's somebody I have a great relationship. He's like a second father to me. He said, Giblet, the boy can move. He can do it. He can move laterally. He can get down the field a little bit. I'm sorry for the terrible impersonation. Thunder, I love it. But yeah, he from what I heard, he could move right away. And so I'm sitting here thinking, well, how did he end up at JUCO? Like, what was it? Is there something on the tape here? And as I watched him play, what you talked about, that power on contact, that was there from day one. Mm-hmm. That was always something that he had. It was much more of a raw kind of bring him along type of situation. And Garrett Tuja and company did a fantastic job of that, because when he first got here, you're right. The power on contact, when he was getting his hands on you, his hands were on you. The only problem with that is sometimes he carried very lazy hands. Sometimes he lunged with the hands in very egregious ways when he first got there, to where I'm a former defensive lineman. And when I watched some of his first year tape, I said, that's the type of guy I want to play against, because when he gets his hands on you, you're in for a battle. But there are going to be those moments where you're like, there's the opening. There it is. And
when he plays with good fundamentals, he can wall you off so effective, because he's just enormous. And I'll tell you, and my listeners know this, I have a soft spot for these dancing bear offensive linemen. It's not always pretty, but they will maul you, they will fight you, and they're just huge. And so, like, I think I probably liked Orlando Brown more than most people, because I was just like, no, I'm good with that. I think back to Morgan Moses. Now I'm dating myself. But like, I watched him coming out going, that's a guy I can play with. When you're that big, even if it's not always picture perfect technique, he just gets guys blocked. And I appreciate the guys that big. Sometimes you said lazy with the hands. He doesn't play lazy though. Like there's not, he wants to bring the fight always. It's just sometimes the technique can come a little short.
And that's where the evolution came in, right? Before, when I talk about the punch and the leaning and all that good stuff, that was cleaned up over time. Yeah. The biggest jump I saw from year 1 to year 3 with him is confidence. To me, cornerback and left tackle, or really cornerback and any offensive lineman, have to have one thing in common: short memories. You're going to lose. That is just the reality. You are dealing with freaks of nature that if you put them in the wild at defensive end, people would say, oh my God, I'm supposed to keep him from something that he wants to get. I'm not going to be able to do that. Yeah. But when he first got here, I look at the Clemson game. I believe it was either his first or his second year. He lost 1 rep, and then he looked a little shaky after that. And then he loses another rep. And then by the time he loses that 3rd or 4th rep in true pass pro, all of the fundamentals had gone out the window. At that point, it was just a reaching and guessing game. And they were getting pressure with 3 players because Belton seemed so rattled. That did not happen in his last year with NC State. Yeah. He was at a point where his confidence reached a level where it was like, you know what? I'm going to lose sometime. That's okay. I'm not the perfect player. Nobody is. Joe Tooney, all-pro guard that I played with at NC State, a phenomenal player. He's now in the NFC North too, which, by the way, my Detroit Lions are champs of. But he was amazing. Even he had moments where he would lose, but he was steady all the way through. He knew who he was. Belton reached that in his senior year. He reached that enlightenment, that nirvana, if you will, of offensive line, where it's like, I'm going to lose, but that doesn't mean that all of a sudden I have to get outside of my technique, get outside of my framework. Now, there are obviously the things of like, hey, he still does have those kind of moments where the technique does tend to go a little bit, but it's not from the same place that it used to be from, which is very important. In the NFL, blocking Aiden Hutchinson 2 times, blocking Montez Sweat 2 times a year, blocking all these guys twice a year, you're going to have moments where it's like, that wasn't a great rep. but you've got to realize I'm a pro. Jordan Love still needs me. I've still got to do my job. And I'll be quite honest, as much as I love him at whatever position you want to play him on the offensive line, I see him as a much better fit for a potential right tackle or maybe even a guard spot because, again, he's just a massive man mover. That's who he is. That's what he does. That's when he's at his most effective. And so his pass blocking, it evolved. It got better. But his run blocking from day one was where I was a little bit surprised because that's where I heard, oh, well, there are some struggles there and he doesn't have the best leverage because of how big he is and all that. He was an absolute road grader on that left side of the offensive line. So, I'm very excited to see where he goes going forward. It just hurts my heart because all my favorite players keep getting drafted to all the teams I like the least. Donovan Ezra-Rocco is another guy. Love him to death. He went to the Cowboys. I said, what is going on with all of my favorite players going to the few teams where I can't just watch and say, oh, I hope he does well today.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry about that, Kenton. But so you mentioned that switch to guard, and I think the perception of him coming out was that he was going to have to make that move. And yet you hear the Packers talk about him and they go, we think he can play tackle. And that was the same with Jordan Morgan at Arizona. The perception, I think, in the mainstream draft conversations was, yes, he played tackle at Arizona, but he's going to have to be a guard in the NFL. Frankly, I watched him and I thought I'd play him at tackle first. I'd let him fail at tackle before moving him to guard because I'm a sucker for a guy like this big that can move like him. But I also see the opportunity of like, but he can be a really, really, really special guard. Then if you see that as a team, then you have to make that move. So how do you, from your standpoint, having watched his evolution, how do you think the best, like if you're going to lay out the Anthony Belton, let's make him the best player he can be plan, what does that plan look like?
Yeah, so I agree with what you said 1,000% because tackle is his natural position. That's where he's played the most. That's all he's played at the college level. So I'm never going to say break a guy out of what makes him comfortable because that goes back to that confidence thing with Belton I was talking about. Yeah. Give him the opportunity, right? Give him the opportunity and say, hey, we want to see what you got at tackle. All throughout rookie minicamp, all throughout OTAs, even the early parts of training camp. Let's play at tackle. Let's see how you handle a Rashawn Gary. Let's see how you handle some of these prolific edge rushers and see if you got it. Now, obviously, we're not going to say, oh, you got beat by Rashawn Gary. Get your big behind inside because everybody, if getting beat by Rashawn Gary was the metric, congratulations. No tackles in the NFL anymore. We're running double guard sets. So, it's a situation where I give him that opportunity and time to develop. But I think most people kind of look at Belton as a guy that his first year in the NFL was going to be a little bit of a red shirt or like, let's figure this thing out type of year. And then from there, after that first year of saying, you know what, we've seen you every day, day in, day out in practice at left tackle and right tackle. We've seen you every day at this. We've seen you against the best guys. We've seen you against the mediocre guys. We've seen you against other teams in training camp practice. Then you can have that conversation of, we think it'll be best for you to move to guard, or, hey, we found a diamond in the rough. You are everything that we wanted you to be. And let's be very honest about this. The Packers have done an exquisite job of developing offensive linemen. Regardless of how you feel about the Packers, I know my Lions fans going to come for me after seeing me talk nicely about the Packer today. But regardless of how you feel about it, you cannot say that the offensive line development in Green Bay has not been, anything short of amazing. I don't know what y'all putting in the cheese there, but you got Wisconsin bringing out all those. It's the great offensive lineman at Wisconsin, and now y'all doing it in Green Bay too. What's happening in there? What does the rest of the country need to know?
There's something in the water. I don't know. That Lake Michigan breeze. I can't tell for sure.
It's crazy.
Someone his size, I would have expected when I turned on the tape against someone like James Pierce Jr. and that Tennessee front. I would have expected to see him struggle with speed guys like that. And I didn't think he did. So what is it about him that allows it? Because the one kind of rusher I saw him struggle with really was the guy who was explosive enough to redirect. When it's like, okay, I'm gonna start working the arc and then I'm gonna work you back inside, or I'm gonna feint to the inside, get you to overset, and then try and run the hoop. But there aren't that many guys that can do stuff like that special pass rush stuff.
Yeah.
So if the answer is, well, against special pass rushers, he's not special, I'm like, okay, fine. But so what is it about him that you think makes him able to handle the speed as well as he does? Because I didn't see it as a problem for him on tape.
The footwork is the big deal. At the end of the day, when you talk about Belton, again, like I said, when I said what the beginning of him was, it was, oh, he's weak against the run. Oh, yeah, he's not the greatest run blocker that you'll see. He doesn't just, maul people. And I said, okay, if that's what it is, that's what it is, and I'll see. But that was one of his strengths as well. So I'm looking at him and I'm saying, where's the hole? The hole is the consistency. He has the stuff. It's like a really, really great pitcher, right? It's like NC State has a pitcher named Don Fritton. When he is rolling and when he is at his best, he can strike anybody out. Anybody can get put down. K's on the board, okay? More K's than my line brothers, and I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. And for those of you who know what that means, there's a lot of K's going on. But when you talk about the moments of bad Don Fritton is when he can't find his exact control in his spots. It's the same thing with Belton. When his technique is on, when he's rolling his best stuff, oh, congratulations. Hey, good job to whoever is out there at the end. But unless you have extremely special patch rush stuff, you're cooked. The question for him is, can the consistency get there, and can you maintain your confidence? Every single game of Belton's where I watched and I said, oh, boy, this is a tough one. It started off, you could see how the game was going to go by the first or second series. Because it wasn't like he had a ton of games where he started off terribly and then just picked it up until his last year. And even then, he didn't start off terribly in really any games I can think of. So that's what it's about for him more than anything else. The speed stuff around the edge, he's a big guy, but he's got those dancer's feet. He really and truly does at a very high level. Yep. So the key for him, consistency and confidence. Those are two things. Be the same guy with the same technique. That's all it is. In the words of Anita Baker, from beginning to end, 365 days a year, I need that same old pass set. She said same old love, but you get the point. You get the point.
No, it works. It works. I like it. More with Kenton Gibbs on Anthony Belton next on Locked On Packers. I'm so glad you brought this up because we just spent time on Locked On Packers talking about two players on the team, one of whom you're familiar with, at the very least. Zach Tom, when he tore his pec last offseason, he said, I didn't have the confidence in that arm to be able to throw my hands the way that I would want. Lucas Van Ness hurt his hand early in the season last year, and he said, I didn't have the confidence with it for a long time to be able to do that. And I think we underrate the coaching part of this that is keeping these guys up, because we think of them as the biggest, baddest dudes on the planet, and they are, but they're still human beings. And that confidence part of it, like, you are going to lose reps. And we all know, because we've experienced in our lives, even in just like the banalities of everyday life, you mess up, it's easy to get down on yourself. And when it's your job and you mess up, it's really easy to get down on yourself. So it seems like the coaching piece of this is not so much like the technique. Yes, he knows he's got to be more consistent with it. But if you're saying it's stemming from the confidence part of it, then it's like what Luke Butkus and those offensive line coaches in Green Bay need to be able to do is play psychiatrist as much as anything and make sure that he is up here with where he feels about what he's doing. And that will allow him to play his best ball.
I 1,000% agree with you. I tell people all the time that, football is literally 80% mental. The physical part of it matters a lot. Don't get me wrong. That 20% is so important to get you drafted higher or lower based on what the 20 looks like. But that mental aspect of it, that mental aspect of coming back from the injury, that mental aspect of coming back from just a lost rep, that mental rep or the mental ability to come back from a bad week where, you talk about guys with special pass rush stuff. What if you go up against one of those guys and, like I said about corners and tackles, both of y'all are wide in the open. If you do your job wrong as a corner, everybody sees that wide receiver gritty in the end zone. If you do your job wrong as a tackle, now Aiden Hutchinson's doing the Michael Jackson dance on you. Everybody saw it. But it's about the ability to understand, hey, that was one rep, or even that was one bad game. I couldn't do nothing with that Dobbs kid. He kept getting open everywhere. I live with it. I'm going to be all right. Or, understanding that at the end of the day, this is my job. One bad week does not define me. I am in the NFL for a reason, which is something I thought about with Belton a lot. You could tell when he first got to NC State, it was that doubt. It was that little hiccup where it's like, my punch, I think I got a good punch, but maybe I need to lean into it a little bit more. And it's like when you lean and start ducking your head and all that, that's where you get in those dicey situations where you're going to get beat even worse. So you're absolutely right about that playing psychiatrist, because that confidence is one of the central core pieces to what makes a great player at any position, but especially a position where if nobody talks about you, you're doing good. You don't want anybody talking about you, and that's how you know you're good.
David Bakhtiari, I think about this often. He said of pass rushers, they only have to beat me once. I have to block them upwards of 40 or 50 times a game. I have to win 40 reps. You only have to win 1 or 2, and you get paid $25 million a year. And that's the difference. And you know, you're not going to give any sympathy to offensive linemen as a former defensive guy, but that is the reality. Like, you on 40 pass sets, you have to win 40, or like you feel like you've not done your job, and that's a tough ask. I don't want you to get mad about this question, but I have heard this criticism online. And so I don't want to over index online criticisms, right? But the ACC, the last couple of years, at least last year, not super loaded with pass rushers. So the question, I guess, is if he had played in the Big Ten and the SEC, you might feel a little bit more confident about some of the level of competition here. Not that, again, these players are all good. They're D1 players, high college programs. But was he tested enough in the ACC?
So you talked about James Pierce Jr. and that absolutely fierce defensive line. They play it like hockey.
Awesome.
And I'm glad to be on Locked On Packers today because y'all understand this. They play it like hockey. They do it in lines. They just, all right, first line, second line, third line, get on in there. Was that not enough? Oh, you know what? You're right. The ACC didn't have a ton of good pass rushers, but there is this guy that's predicted to go somewhere in the top 5 next year by the name of TJ Parker. Does that name ring a bell to anybody?
Sure.
Does he sound any good to anybody? So don't get me wrong. You are not seeing him against 10 or 15 top level guys, but who do you see against 10 to 15 top level guys? Like, even if you look at Will Campbell at LSU, he played some really good edges some weeks, other weeks, not so much. And even some of the guys that get labeled as great edge rushers or great edges in the SEC, I mean, let's be very clear about something. Shamar Stewart, who's now in a contract holdout with the Bengals, was labeled as a top-tier guy from there. If you are watching this show, congratulations. We have more hosts than Shamar Stewart ever had than Shamar Stewart had sacks in any season of his career. So that's just what 1.5 was his high, Peter. That's just the truth.
No, I know.
It to me is so interesting how different places get these different labels. He's played against Donovan Ezraku, who I think was the best edge in the draft by a good margin in terms of pass rush bagging ability. I said, Lions, if you can get him with that second round pick, you better pick up the phone, baby. Use your Travis Scott abilities. But it's if you're talking about the level of competition you face, just turn on the tape and see, oh, NFL guy here. Oh, NFL guy there. Oh, first rounder here. Oh, first rounder there. He's got the film against guys who have played at a high level, who are going to be playing at a high level going forward. So I'm a little bit confused as to, how that happens. But I get it. A lot of people don't know ball, and so the perception. And so what Paul Feinbaum says, a man who is known to holding on to bad decisions. You see the cut with the nothing on top and the sides fully kept. That just tells you he's a man who holds on to bad convictions. But you let him tell you the ACC ain't got no players. Do you believe it? Watch the tape. Watch who he's playing against. Some absolutely fearsome pass rushers that he held his own against, to say the least.
I would say that's a man that doesn't have friends that'll tell him the truth, because it's got to you got to give it up, dog. Like, come on.
I'll tell you what.
All right, Ken, I appreciate this so much, man. I really do. 20 minutes on offensive linemen. This is what we do on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much. And anyone that wants to check out the stuff Ken's doing, it's always great. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely. Always great to be here. And again, I don't give a piss about nothing but the pride, baby. Go Lions.
We're cutting it. We're cutting it out. All right. Thanks to Kenton for coming on. This is, as I said, one of the great reasons the Locked On Podcast Network exists. It's one of the reasons why I think having these guys is such a valuable resource to me, to you, to be able to bring, especially someone like Kenton, who has played ball, former NC State Wolfpack defensive tackle, knows what it's like to go up against a 6'6", 330-pound offensive lineman and try and win. And so I love the insight there, and he's just like such a character. Man, I love talking to him. He's so much fun. All right, we're not going to be back tomorrow. I normally say back tomorrow. We're not. Tuesday, we're off. We will be back Wednesday. I'm traveling. Thank you all for staying with us through the off season. Mandatory minicamp coming up. That's why Aaron Rodgers signed. And so we'll get you through all of that and then get you set for training camp. That is not too far away all of a sudden. Summer is here. Thank goodness. Enjoy it. And I'll talk to you all very soon. Subscribe wherever you find podcasts to Locked On Packers. Follow me on the social medias. Follow the podcast on the social medias. Subscribe over on our YouTube page where you can be watching us right now so you can stay Locked On Packers.